Mitchell, a three is good. Busts the foul. A chance for four. Only three to shoot. Gonna have to make something happen. Clark through the lane, reverses it in. Post feed. Boston. Oh, beats the clock. Wow. Indiana will reset. Clark fire away. You bet.
Hello, Fever fans, and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, your go-to spot for everything Indiana Fever. I'm your host, Logan. In today's episode, we are recapping a very tough loss to the reigning WNBA champions, the New York Liberty. We'll break down the game's biggest moments, what went right, what fell apart in the final minutes, and what this young squad can take away as an opportunity to grow. It's never easy to lose a close one, especially against a powerhouse like New York, but there were some silver linings, some standout performances, and lesson learned. Let's get into it. It is race day. I have the race over here on my right-hand side as I'm recording this on Sunday. Happy Indianapolis 500 to everybody that celebrates. I'm going to record and release this episode probably during the Indianapolis 500 or right around the end of the 500 leading up to the Pacers game tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. An exciting weekend in the city of Indianapolis. I talked about this on the last episode that I did with the Pacers preview of Game 3. But Friday night, Pacers get a win at Madison Square Garden in a 2-0 win. Advancing their lead to a 2-0 lead in the Eastern Conference Finals. Then the Fever play at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. So a very busy weekend to start Memorial Day weekend in Indianapolis. Tyrese Halliburton flew back and was in the crowd. Rick Carlisle in the crowd to watch the Fever take on the New York Liberty at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So a quick turnaround for Carlisle and Tyrese to be in the crowd supporting Caitlin Clark and the Fever. Great game all the way down to the wire, but the Fever are unable to hold on as they did have quite the opportunity to seal the deal. And with a win, I think this would have been one of the most historic sports weekends in all of Indiana sports history. I mean, it would have been quite the experience for those that are in Indianapolis that are going to the Speedway this afternoon to watch the race. It actually was in a rain delay. And then as they were pacing cars just before the green flag was dropped, one of the cars actually crashed. So we are they are behind the what do they call that? The safety car, and they're doing their laps as the hazard is out, and they're trying to clean up the track before it even got started. So it's been a wild start for the Indy 500, but that race, if all goes well, will end well before tip-off tonight for the Indiana Pacers. But we're here to talk the Fever because Saturday they played a very good game against the best team or one of the best teams in the WNBA. If you take into consideration the ending last year, they are the team that is the best team in the WNBA and is the team to beat, to try to dethrone them. And they in Minnesota undefeated to this point, and they remain undefeated as the Fever lose to the New York Liberty 90-88. Game 4 of the season is under our belt, and the Fever moved to 2-2 on the season. Just a quick review of the opponent. They came into the game undefeated and remain that. They are now 3-0. But before we get into this game and recapping what went on and what can be taken from this very good matchup between very good teams and the WNBA, shout out to all the subscribers and fans so far that have followed along. Really appreciate all the support. Getting some pretty good interactions on Twitter now. We're getting a really good following on YouTube and great listens over on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're getting these podcasts. So we really appreciate the support. I can't wait to talk the Fever season. There's another wreck. Marco Andretti looks like. Jeez. That's a tire blown. All right. So Indianapolis 500, not off to a hot start. But you know who is off to a hot start? New York Liberty. And they take on the Fever as we head into this game summary. And again, thank you for listening. If you have listened this far, we are on YouTube. We are on the audio. Sorry, I got distracted by the 500. But we've got the audio versions anywhere you can find your podcast. So you can tune into that. And subscribe, like, comment, helps people find us. The Fever community always growing more and more, especially now that Caitlin Clark has arrived in Indianapolis. I mean, I feel like it's a nationwide following at this point for this team, which is very exciting. Another sellout game on Saturday afternoon. So let's get into the game. Gainbridge Fieldhouse setting the scene, crowd, tremendous energy. Sabrina Ionescu in the Liberty side. So you've got quite a big fan base for those two players, Natasha Cloud, Aaliyah Boston, very good secondary players for this team, or I guess you could even consider Natasha Cloud a 1A, 1B with Ionescu. So yeah, the stage was set. This is going to be a matchup I think that most fans are rooting for in the WNBA playoffs. I think that there is a good chance that the Fever and Liberty could see each other in the postseason should they both advance past their first round playoff games. And I think that they are set up in the way that they might be seated, where this could be very well be a matchup. But we're just 4 games into the 44 that are going to be played this season. But right now, the Fever have proven that they belong in the conversation of some of the top teams in this league. And it was on display in the game on Saturday. Quick thing, lineup change did happen. Lexi Hull in for Dewana Bonner. So she was removed from the starting lineup. As we discussed in the last couple of episodes, how long was it going to take for Stephanie White to insert Lexi Hull? And I thought it was just the health of Sophie Cunningham and getting her back into game speed. But I think right away you noticed when she came back in the last game and made her debut as a Fever player, she was right up to snuff, playing 20 minutes in that game. So over half the game. And really, I thought played well and gave Stephanie White the option. And putting Bonner on the bench and seeing how she fits in with that unit. And I thought she played a much better game than she had been playing. And I think just her age and what she can provide for this team, I actually think it's a really good addition to the bench. And I think it'll be better for her as far as just shorter spurts in games that she can be effective in her length, her rebounding, her defense, but also hitting a couple of key shots and being that steadying force off of the bench. And I think that's why you bring in a champion like Dewana Bonner, and she will be there for a couple of years to help the Fever grow, because this is still a very young team, and helping players like Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, even Alexi Hull, who's a little bit younger in this league as well, just kind of navigate the challenges that you have throughout the WNBA season, but also throughout the career on and off the court. And so that's what Bonner really provides. I mean, besides the impact on the floor, she has quite the impact in the locker room, in the community. So a good change. I think a needed change for Stephanie White's team. They do go smaller, though, with Bonner out for Hull. Hull's a smaller player than Dewana Bonner. So she will be instrumental in what they can actually do and have the impact on the glass. I think that there were times that they still struggled in this game on the glass with big physical players down low, with Brianna Stewart. I think John Kell Jones. I think they cause problems for the Fever that a lot of it's just because of their size and their length and being able to grab offensive boards, but also creating things in the post. However, that being said, I thought Aaliyah Boston was probably the best she's been in a Fever uniform in this game. I mean, she really impressed me. Just as a quick headliner, this was an Aaliyah Boston game, and she delivered in so many ways. And I thought Caitlin late in the game really helped, but they're going to need a little bit more, and we'll talk about that. But let's go through a quick rundown. Momentum shifts or turning points. A tightly contested first quarter saw both teams trading baskets inside the paint. Leah Boston leading the way for the Fever with 10 points in the first quarter. With under 2 minutes left in the first quarter, Caitlin Clark found Lexi Hull in traffic for a layup, followed by Dewana Bonner intercepting an ensuing inbound pass, giving Hull, who hit a three-pointer, to record 5 points in 6 seconds. We're not quite up to the 8 points, 9 seconds, but that was pretty darn good and close. And it gave the Fever quite a boost. They needed that in that first quarter. Boston followed up with 7 points in the second quarter, but ultimately it was the Liberty backed by an 11-point quarter from Sabrina Ionescu, who took the lead 55-46 into the halftime break. The Fever trailed 55-46 at halftime, but turned things around in the third quarter when they outscored the Liberty 30-13. Caitlin Clark started the game 0 for 7 from three-point range, Going back to Tuesday's loss in Atlanta, she had missed 14 3-point attempts in a row, but her shooting slump ended with a step back three that resulted in a 4-point play with just over a minute left in the third quarter, and Clark closed the third period with another three. This from 34 feet. It was a bomb, and she hit it. Tyrese Halliburton going crazy on both of those, supporting Caitlin as Caitlin supports him. I mean, this is what you want to see as a Fever fan, right? Getting that crowd involved, because it is that same crowd that gives such an advantage to the Indiana Pacers. Well, now you've got that same kind of intensity and ball knowledge in the stands with Caitlin Clark. And it's just a spectacle at this point watching Caitlin. I mean, some of the shots she hits, even that 4-point play, that shot that she hit was contested really well. Obviously gets fouled, gets through contact, and just buries the three. And after struggling, I know she'd gone 140 games dating back all the way to her sophomore year in college with a 3-pointer made, and that snapped against the Atlanta Dream because Ryan Howard played her extremely well. And I thought defensively, Natasha Cloud, sometimes Ionescu, I felt like gave Caitlin some trouble, and that's what teams are going to do. They're going to face guard her the full length of the floor. That pressure has been a challenge for Caitlin. Caitlin has had a real problem with turnovers, and we'll talk about that as we get further into really breaking down the performances in this game. But the Fever, on a huge quarter, get all the way back to a really good spot against this Liberty team. Fever close out that third quarter on a 12-4 run to cut the Liberty's halftime lead, outscoring them again 30-13 in the third. Clark, 16 points after the third with 10 assists, 4 rebounds, and 8 turnovers. Came alive after struggling from the offensive side of things. Kelsey Mitchell also added 9 in the quarter. Ionescu had 19 points after the third, but the Liberty went cold, while Indiana went on to shoot 54% in that quarter. She energized the Fever and really gave them the chance at the end, kept them in the game, and the Fever had a great chance to close this out. And at the end of the third, the Fever lead was all the way up to 8 points, 76-68. Following a 30-point third quarter in which Indiana only allowed 13 points, the Fever continued to find success at the rim, with Natasha Howard sinking 3 consecutive layups. A lot of defensive communication issues with the Liberty in this game. Their defense was just not as good. Now, the thing with the Liberty is that they are never out of a game. They actually set a WNBA record with the amount of 3-pointers made in their last game against the Chicago Sky. They come into this game ready to bomb threes, and they hit quite a few threes in this game as well. If you look at the breakdown between the Fever and the New York Liberty, I'm trying to find the stat real quick because I lost it. Amount of 3-pointers made for the Liberty. There we go. Found it. They made one. They don't do a total on WNBA's website. That's really odd. I'm going to have to count these. 2, 4, 6, 7. They only hit 7 threes, so not a tremendous amount. I thought they hit more. It seemed like they hit a lot more. But anyway, just going back to the way that the Fever played in the third quarter, best quarter of the season that they played defensively, getting turnovers, causing problems on the defensive end. I felt like most of the game was played in the Fever's half, right? I mean, it felt like a total domination by Indiana. I mean, the Liberty were having a real tough time getting anywhere in the paint. They weren't using their size advantage. Ionescu hadn't played as well as she'd been playing throughout the game. I felt like they defended her pretty well. And I think they caused a lot of problems as far as just their offense and that high speed that the Fever really like to impose on teams at times really kept the Liberty on their heels. And I felt like they were constantly attacking a Liberty defense that just wasn't getting through and communicating with all these really great shooters and offensive players that the Fever can deploy at times on you. And then, the depth looked pretty good with DeWanna Bonner. Bonner had an impact in this game where they'd really been missing that from that role from her, especially. But in that new role that she played, while she still struggled from the field mightily, did not have a good game there. She only had 2 points, and 2 of those were off of free throws. I did feel like her length at times caused problems. She was a +9 on the court, which was the best plus minus of any of the Fever players. She had 7 rebounds, and really, I thought just caused problems with her size and her length to be able to defend the Liberty players that, they've got really good bigs in Jonquel Jones and Brianna Stewart. And I felt like Bonner was a big part of, some of the success that they had against a Brianna Stewart, who only shot 4 of 11 and at times saw Tawana Bonner on her. So, and Aaliyah Boston. But I really did. I felt like the Fever came out with a game plan and really stuck to it. That's something that Kelsey Mitchell has talked about throughout the season so far, is that, and I think a lot of this comes with the inexperience of this Fever team. They're very young. They're still trying to learn this league. I still feel like they do stray from the game plan, when oftentimes when you go into a game plan, these coaches are so good, and Stephanie White's staff is so good that, you really want to follow what you had planned for this team. Because, I mean, you take days, sometimes weeks to set up a game plan for certain teams, and the scouting team does a nice job of preparing yourself, or preparing your team a game plan, and you got to go in there and execute. And I think because of the immaturity, a lot of it ends up being ISO ball that they turn to. But I think what the Fever are really good at is moving the basketball, getting in the pick and roll game, and getting into pick and roll actions to free Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, and then breaking down defenses and hitting wide open shooters. I think that's where the Fever are most effective, is breaking down the defense with Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark, running the pick and roll actions. I think that's where you see a lot of the success that the Fever had against the Liberty in this game, especially with Aaliyah Boston and how well she was playing offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, getting inside, getting her own misses. I mean, Aaliyah Boston, again, like I said, probably best game she's played as a Fever player, I felt like, overall, and just her involvement in the offense and how difficult she made it for the Liberty at times defensively. So that was big. But that fourth quarter, things start to happen, things start to unravel for the Fever. And you saw, and I tweeted this, I think the Fever end up going up 80-68, I believe 80-68. You're feeling real good about yourself. Crowd was into it. You just hit a basket. You're really starting to feel like you're pulling away from this really good Liberty team. There's still some time left, but you feel like if you execute what you were doing throughout the game, that you should be able to hold them off. But then all heck broke loose. The Liberty start to get into the Fever's defense. That's when you really start to see Ionescu getting involved. Brianna Stewart, Cloud really played well late down the stretch, and you really did start to feel like they were getting a lot of their momentum back, and they end up making it a very, very close game at the end. Then it's kind of this back and forth between Fever and the Liberty, who's going to have the ball last, who's going to be able to make that last play. Then there are several controversial calls late into the game by the referees, and we'll talk about Stephanie White's press conference. But the Fever had the ball in a tie game with about 12 seconds left. Caitlin Clark drives to the basket before passing to Tawana Bonner. Bonner goes up for a layup, but there is clear contact by Natasha Cloud, and she hits Bonner on the side to kind of throw her off a little bit, and then goes up and blocks it because Bonner's not able to go up as explosively as she could, because there was contact before at her hip. It knocked Bonner off her spot, and then Natasha is able to get higher up to get the block and get a hand on it and knock it out of bounds. And then the Fever aren't able to capitalize on that. But again, that was a really bad one. No call on that. And then on the next possession, Ionescu receives 2 foul shots. This one was a little bit more, I would say, the right call. I mean, there is some contact there. It's pretty normal contact as far as basketball is concerned, but I did feel like there was, I could see a reason why Lexi Hall gets that foul. She ends up making the 2 free throws, and then Indiana has just 3 seconds remaining. They call a timeout. Caitlin Clark is obviously going to get the ball in this situation. They get the ball at the half court or just before half court. They go to inbound the basketball. Clark gets it, takes a dribble, decides to go up with it, and there is some contact as she brings the ball through, and Natasha Cloud's guarding her, who's been a really good matchup for Caitlin all game. Like as far as Natasha's concerned, I mean Natasha really did a nice job on Clark. I thought Caitlin goes through, and there is some contact. I don't know. You don't usually. I think you do see that call. It's probably a 50-50 toss up kind of thing where there is a lot of contact. It kind of looks like Caitlin lunges a little bit at Natasha Clark to try to draw the foul. So there's always going to be that in the ref's mind. There's always that you can't go into a defender out of a normal shooting position to where you're lunging at somebody to try to draw that contact. And you've seen that eliminated in the NBA where you cannot lunge at somebody. You have to go into a natural shooting motion. And if they make contact in your natural shooting position, that's when the foul's called. You can't go outside of a natural shooting position to try to draw a foul. So I think that one's a toss up. I could see Stephanie White's argument though, because there's contact on the shoulder as she's bringing the ball through to get into a shooting position or an attacking position. And then on the wrist going up into the shot, there's a little bit of contact, but kind of that ball in hand thing where you can't really tell. There's not really a great angle of it because Caitlin Clark's kind of shielding what was happening. So it's a really tough call. I mean, that is you're going to make somebody mad in that moment making that call. Obviously, as a Fever person, I'm like, I see where you could call that a foul, but also I could see where you don't. So I think a real tough position to put the refs in. I think it would have been called quite a bit, but who knows? I mean, at this point, and that's the other thing too is what doesn't help is, and we've seen this throughout the weekend, and I think it is definitely something that WNBA has to address at some point. The I want to be careful, but like the consistency of the officiating is not there yet on WNBA level. I feel like there are some good officials in this league, but I feel like there's far more inconsistencies in this league than there are in leagues like the NBA. I just don't think that the refereeing caliber is there quite yet. I think that it will be difficult because a lot of those refs are still going into the NBA or going overseas, or I think you're seeing the NBA get the top tier of the refs, and then you've got the other refs that maybe not the WNBA is not getting as much. But I think that'll change as time goes on. You're going to see better officials in this league, but it's just not there yet. I feel like there's just not a consistent official, or sorry, there's not consistent officiating happening in this league. So, and it all comes on this all happens, and then yesterday, Brittany Griner, there's a video going viral around on X where she stops her halftime interview before she's walking off the court, like her walk-off interview going into the half, where she's talking to the sideline reporter, but she sees the ref in her corner of her eye and she stops the interview and turns her back to the camera in the interview and has a lot to say and cusses at the ref. Which, I mean, they do that all the time. That you'll hear some pretty foul language towards refs at times in both leagues. But she wasn't happy, and rightfully so. Brittany Griner was, I think, in the right in what she was talking about. And it just shows you just how frustrated these players are. And this league is trying to build its reputation. I think you got to have better officiating if you're going to propel yourself to that next level to be a league that's taken seriously, because when you don't have good officiating, that just diminishes a lot of what this league does and what it's about, because this league is legit. Now you just got to get officiating, that is. And that's a big complaint that I have as far as the league's concerned so far. But yeah, they advanced the ball, no foul. Here's what Stephanie White said. I thought that she got fouled talking about Caitlin. I think it's pretty egregious what's happening, or I thought it was pretty egregious what's happening in the last two games. White said, the disrespect by the referees for our team right now has been pretty unbelievable. So it's disappointing that it doesn't go both ways, or it hasn't gone both ways, but we also can't allow that to consume us. We got to be able to play through that She later adds, there's a system to making sure we can send stuff to the WNBA and communicate our grievances. I don't know that I have ever felt like the system works. We're not looking for a change. We're looking for consistency. So I think that's it, right? I think that there's a potential there that we do have good officiating. It's just the consistency of it, right? Finding the balance, and because the league is growing so much, and the players are getting so much more talented, and there is, this emphasis and focus on the game so much now. There's so much more attention to it, which is great for the league. Um, there's so much growth, but I think with that, there's going to be some growing pains with everything, as was with the NBA when it first started. There's just a lot of growing pains, and I thought the officiating through the, earlier in the decade of the 2010, maybe officiating wasn't that solid in the NBA, and they had a lot of issues with officials, and they've had to go to temporary refs because of the bargaining agreements. But again, I think officiating is always going to be a cornerstone. Like, I don't think the officiating in the NFL is good right now, but again, it's a lot of growth, figuring out how to officiate games where the players are faster, stronger, more physical. I think it's getting to be a more physical league in a lot of aspects, and a lot of more physicality in a lot of the leagues across the board. I think we're less finesse than we had been. We're kind of regressing back to more of a physical game for men and women's sports. So it'll be interesting to see what the response is from the WNBA. I'm sure Stephanie White will get fined for that comment. um, but that was reported by Scott Agnes in the press conference that happened. It's kind of hard to find that on the YouTube channels, just because they've taken a lot of that out of the press game conference, just because I think the Fever made a professional decision, to take that out of their YouTube video. But that was what was being reported from Cambridge. So, top Indiana Fever players, Aaliyah Boston, massive factor. Saturday's effort against the Liberty, really, I mean, she's one of the best post players in the league now. And her, what is this? This would be her third year. So she's really made a name for herself. She is a dominant force, a force that should propel this team to being one of the top teams in this league for a very long time, as long as healthy. She did have some misses there in the fourth, but I thought her play was critical for the Fever to be even close in this game and to even have that lead. Um, Real good screens on the pick and roll with Caitlin Clark. She does so much for Caitlin as far as opening up that ability to score for Clark, that, Caitlin's constantly getting hounded. And I think sometimes in Iowa, and even in other, seasons past, where, Boston's a second year player, Caitlin's a rookie. And even in her sophomore year, Caitlin's just still growing tremendously. And even Aaliyah Boston is growing each game. But I feel like there is still a lot of growing and learning that needs to be done between the two of them. Just figuring out how to play with one another. I think they've got a great relationship. You always see them on the bench hugging it out after certain plays, or, dabbing each other up. I feel like their relationship's really taken off over the last couple of years, and they really enjoy each other's company, and playing with each other. So that's big, having that chemistry. I think the Fever chemistry is through the roof right now. It's, again, I think it's this Pacers and Fever Entertainment and Sports Group that really focus on bringing in high quality human beings. And when you do that, and they are good basketball players, it makes it just so easy for you to root for them. And they are tight knit, and that is a hard team to beat when you've got good chemistry. We've seen what that's done for the men's side of it, but you also see it with the women's side, and you actually saw it on the floor with the Liberty. The Liberty are a very tight knit group who have played their butts off over the last couple of years, have played together, have that camaraderie, have that chemistry together, know where each other are going to be on the floor, and then you add in a good piece like Natasha Cloud to replace a really good player. And she's been awesome. I mean, you see what the effects can be, and that's what the Fever want to get to. They want to be as good as this Liberty team, if not better. And I think they're well on their way. They're still missing some pieces. They're still missing some maturity and some growth aspects. And I think they've got a lot of traits that could make them better than what that Liberty team is. But I think there's still some room to grow for this team. And I think they're at least a year or two away from really being that top team like the Liberty have been. and even like the Lynx too. But yeah, I mean, just a great game. She went toe to toe with Jonquel Jones, and Jonquel Jones is a great post player, one of the best post players, if not the best post player in this league. You see the impact that she can have. She had a great game yesterday, had 12 boards. She had 3 assists, 26 points to match alongside Ionescu, who had 23. And that's kind of what I think you're trying to model the Caitlin Clark Boston relationship and connection with. You got to get to where you're like those two, even like Brianna Stewart too, where those three just dominate. That's a big three. I mean, that is, and then you go in and add Natasha Cloud with Phoebish and Johannes, and then Gardner Burke off the bench. Like, and Sabali didn't even play; she was out. This team is stacked. I mean, it's a hard team to beat. I don't know if they get the number one. This is just a hard team to beat. I don't know if you can beat them if they've got home court advantage. So the Lynx might have something to say about that, and if Collier might have something to say that. But it's just this team is on a different level, and the depth. Again, we keep talking about how important depth is in these leagues, these professional leagues, and the Fever are still searching for some depth and some help there. Where they brought in Brianna Turner, who's a great depth piece. Sydney Colson hasn't been as impactful yet, but and then you've got Sophie Cunningham, who's come off the bench, and now Dewana Bonner, who's coming in off the bench. Like, that's good depth, but I'm talking like the Liberty have great depth. I mean, they probably have 7 to 8 players that would be starters in this league, maybe even 9. So that's scary to think about if you're a Fever fan or a Lynx fan or a Mercury fan, Mystics fan. Like, some of these top teams in the league are going to have to compete against the Aces, have to compete against this Liberty team. So just a very mature performance by the Liberty. They were down but never out. And that's, again, I think you can, if you're a Fever player, Fever fan, you can look at them and really try to, you want to model. I mean, you're not going to be exactly like, obviously, but you want to model the intensity, the maturity, the champion level experience that you have with the Liberty, the ability to respond like New York did. I mean, they were pretty much out of this game, and all of a sudden come storming back and just take advantage of their experience. And they've been there before, right? They are the heart of the champions, or have the heart of champions. But so much of that's just growth, honestly. It's experience. Like the Fever, you fast forward, if next year's Fever team had this same kind of opportunity, I think you probably see the Fever pull it out. But they're in year 2 with this core, with this group, and they're trying to figure out what that looks like. But they're still a piece or 2 away, I think, of really having a chance to bounce a Liberty team and best of 5, 7 series, whatever it might be. So what a game. I mean, not the outcome we wanted, but the fight, the grit, the intensity, because I felt like, go back to game 2 against the Dream, you saw a much more physical Dream team, much more experienced, hungrier, faster, more desire in that team. Game 3, I thought the Fever showed really great fight and a great response to that. And then this was like a perfect setup to see, this is a test. This is like a litmus test here of what could they do against an undefeated Liberty team that has a good chance to win another title this year. And I thought they did really well. I thought they responded really well. Still could use some work on the boards. They're a smaller team, so that's not going to really be their forte, but they've got to be better on the boards. The starting unit does. The bench unit really benefited from having Dewana Bonner out there, who was really good defensively and rebound the basketball. And that's where they caught up to the Liberty. They actually out-rebound the Liberty in the game. But I thought in moments where it mattered, the Liberty did take advantage of Indiana just not getting a rebound and Indiana not getting to the foul line as much. I think, or at least shooting as well. I mean, they really struggle from the free throw line right now. And I think you can't leave points out there. You cannot. And I tweeted this a couple times. They had a couple turnovers, and Caitlin Clark had 10 turnovers in this game. You can't do that against this Liberty team. You cannot give them free possessions. Um, and sometimes the stats I don't think show it, but momentum wise, right? Because there's oftentimes where a team will um, have a better have more second chance points, but I felt like the rebounds and the time in which they happen impacted the game. So like you look at this game, the Fever actually had more second chance points, 15-6, but there were moments at the end of the game where, you know, rebounds were falling into the hands of Liberty players, and even though they're not scoring, they're creating more time off the clock or whatever it might be. I felt like there were moments of that because if you look at just some of the possession stuff, or even in the points in the paint, Fever 52 over 42 for the Liberty and points in the paint. Second chance points, the Fever had a 9+9 margin there, 15 points for the Fever on second chance and only 6 for the Liberty. And then fast break points, again, Fever 10 points, Liberty 9. So I thought the Liberty played really well and deserved to win this game. But that experience, the defense, and then just a great fourth quarter by the Liberty where they outscore the Fever 22-12. And again, you can't have empty possessions like that against a team that's going to be a title contender and have won a title in the last year, the reigning champs. You just can't have that. You can't go that quiet in a quarter, and that really hurt the Fever. Which they'll get better. They'll get better in those late game moments, but right now they're still learning, and you can tell that they still are not to snuff with the Liberty just yet. Uh, Another position where they lost the game, points or not points off turnovers. Points off turnovers, the Fever actually better there too, 18 over 10. But the big thing was turnovers. They were turning the ball over in important possessions late in the game, in the fourth especially, where you just can't have that. You can't have those. I remember one specifically, I think was Lexi Hull turns the ball over. They don't get a ball inbounded. You just can't have those against a really good team like that, because a 2-point difference is not getting a ball inbounded, turning the ball over on a dumb pass, throwing the ball out of bounds, dribbling it off your foot. Like, it's those moments that just matter the most. And then bench scoring again, the Fever really struggling with that. They just don't have the depth. And although the Liberty only got 9 from their bench, because their starters are so good, they're going to provide so much more. I mean, you get the big 3 game from Ionescu, Stewart, and John Kell Jones with a little bit of obviously with Natasha Cloud also adding a bunch. Like, their starters are going to provide so much of the scoring, where your bench is a place where you might be able to gain some of that back. But again, only 7 points from the Indiana Fever bench, and that's just not good enough, I don't think, to be competitive against teams like this. So starters were even keel, 81-81 for starters in scoring. A lot of that Aaliyah Boston. But I mean, you look at the stats from the starters, pretty neck and neck across the board. Free throws, again, that is something that we talked about in the last game. You got to hit your free throws, and the Fever struggle at times getting those free throws, but also you got to look at getting to the line. I mean, and this might be some officiating, obviously, but this is an experienced team that knows how to get to the line. 25 free throws made out of 32. That was 78% for the Liberty. They got 25 points from the free throw line. Yeah, officiating does have a lot to do with that discrepancy, but also you look at it and the Fever shot 73%, which is worst percentage. They only get to the line 15 times and only get 11 points. And that's a big difference. I mean, that's a massive difference in just a 2-point loss. So yeah, the Fever are going to have to get to the line better. I think there's going to be more consistency from the officials, but also one thing that I've really noticed watching this team still, and this is again with experience, you do see this with teams that are younger, foul trouble, stupid fouls. Like, there were multiple times where you're just like, why in that moment are you fouling? Um, I think there was one instance, I believe it was either Caitlin or it might have been Aaliyah Boston actually. There was one where the Liberty had a clear layup and they go up to try to it wasn't even trying. They were just trying to make contact, and you're like, all right, you're in foul trouble. I think it was Caitlin. And you're just, no, I think it was Aaliyah, but you're just like, why? why in that moment are you fouling? And you just look at the fouls, right? And again, people are like, well, that's the officials' fault. Well, to an extent, yes, but you can't blame everything on the officials. But the Fever 25 fouls that they collected versus 17 personal fouls for the Liberty. So I do feel like this team and Caitlin Clark's constantly in foul trouble. Um, so that's something as a second year player with the speed of the guards that she's trying to keep up with to defend. And she's not an excellent defender. She's a okay defender. But I think that's part of her game that could grow. I just feel like there were a lot of moments where she got into some tough situations and put her teammates into tough situations, and that's across the board. I think Boston does it some. I think Lexi Hull does it some. Sophie Cunningham, with her intensity, she's going to pick up some fouls. Kelsey Mitchell too. They play with a great intensity, but I feel like sometimes put themselves in precarious situations and pick up fouls, and you can't put the Liberty on the line that much, especially when they shoot very well from the free throw stripe. Like you just can't do that. They've got too many experienced players that are vets that know how to win in this league, and they're not going to miss those free throws. The Fever just have not shot the ball well from the free throw stripe, and that's not good. Anything else outside of that? I don't think, right? I think that was pretty much it as far as the game's concerned. Some things that went wrong, obviously Lexi Hull, things that went right and wrong. Lexi Hull was what was right. That was a good move, I think, from Stephanie White to insert Lexi Hull into the starting lineup. Again, we talked at length about that in the last couple of podcasts, and that's been something that was a talking point for many of the media that have written about the Fever or discussed the Fever this year. Is that change needed to happen, and Lexi Hull was really good in her start. 15 points. She was 6 of 9, shot 66%, 2 of 2 from the 3-point line. She was huge in this game. And then Aaliyah Boston, like I said, I mean, just an all-around game. 27 points. She had 13 rebounds, 2 assists. She was great. Shot 63% from the field and really doing a nice job of getting Caitlin Clark open in that last quarter regulation. Caitlin Clark, a double-double, broke the 3-less streak, but foul trouble and her turnovers just not good. You can't turn the ball over 10 times. You just can't. It gives way too many possessions to the Liberty. Even when they're not scoring off those turnovers, it's giving them time to create an offense. And they've got a great offense. So you just can't do that, especially at home, turning the ball over that too much. And then that led to too many team turnovers. I think there's times where this team is just trying to create too much or get too fancy with it. And I think sometimes Caitlin does that where they're great passes. She just doesn't have somebody on the end of those to catch them. I think there's some of that. There are some passes I'm like, wow, that was a great pass. If only they had gotten to it. Which, part of that's Caitlin, part of that's, the personnel around you. You got to understand who can or cannot catch those passes. And that gets Caitlin into some trouble sometimes. And I think even just her second year, they're still trying to figure that out. And some of these new players are still trying to figure that out, is how she plays. So in early season, I mean, you're going to have more of those turnovers because they're just not as fine-tuned or in sync yet. Injury updates. Lainey Hamilton's still out for the season. She did not play, obviously, in that Liberty game. They've gone out and replaced her with Natasha Howard. Not a like for like. I think Lainey Hamilton's really good, but I mean, it's pretty darn close as to how good she has been. Talking about Natasha Cloud. Phoebish, that was actually a huge loss. She only played 6 minutes, went out with a shin injury. They're hoping that's not too serious because that would be a huge loss for their lineup, their depth. Would take a huge hit. And then Sabali did not play. She was out injured as well, which is a really key piece missing for the Liberty too. Adding more bodies to that rotation that Sabali can add. Trends from the previous game or anything to talk about as far as what's going on? Again, like I said, 16 turnovers, not good. Takeaways from this, 69% from the line, not good. Bench rebounded well, but definitely needed more scoring, only shot 25%. And then just the maturity to close out teams. That's what you take away from this game as you move on to play a Mystics team that's playing pretty well. Media reactions and notes from the game, records as well. Caitlin Clark, and this is from the Fever website, WNBA website. I think Wheat is the one that produces these. But Caitlin Clark recorded a double-double with 18 points and 10 assists. Her second of the season and 17th of her career. Aaliyah Boston recorded a double-double with 27 points and 13 rebounds. Her second of the year and 27th of her career. Caitlin Clark eclipsed 250 rebounds in her WNBA career, becoming the fastest point guard in WNBA history to do so, accomplishing it in 44 games. So if you're looking at that compared to how many games they play in a season now, that is a full season. It took her one full season to do that. That's incredible. Caitlin Clark becomes the fastest player in WNBA history to record 750 plus points, 250 plus rebounds, and 250 plus assists. That's wild. Media headlines are going to be controversial calls, give the Fever a heartbreaking loss. But ultimately, I think, you always talk about calls at the end of games, but coaches are always going to say, even if even what Stephanie White said, where the officiating has to be more consistent, she's also going to say that, and this is every coach that's ever coached in the history of ever in basketball, you got to play through that. No matter what the refs are doing, you got to be able to play through that. And when you have a 12-point lead in the fourth quarter, you got to capitalize on that and beat them. But they let the Liberty back into it. Very good team, very mature team, and they know how to win, and they were able to do that on the road. Aaliyah Boston said this in the post game. I think this gives us a great opportunity to go back, learn, and grow. We just played against the champs, and we were up 12 going into the fourth quarter. There's stuff that we look at and say, listen, this is what we worked on because we were going to see them again. Or this is what worked. Sorry. That's what she's talking about. She said there's some stuff that in this game that worked. And because we are going to see them again and making sure that when it comes to that fourth quarter, obviously we know we have to dig deep, but especially against them as the reigning champs. You got to do a much better job, right? In that quote where she's trying to just say, we know what worked. We know what can work against them going forward, but we also know that we had an opportunity there we didn't take, and we've got to do better. We got to grow, and you can't let the reigning champs hang around. And they did just that, and they lost the game because they let the Liberty back into it. And that's just the maturity of a champion and the immaturity of a team that just hasn't been to that level yet and are still learning with two very young players that are their two star players. The next game, we are going to do a different preview episode. There's a lot of time in between now and the next game. They don't play again until Wednesday, the Fever. So a long break, a much needed break. This has been a real tough stretch of games, having Atlanta Dream at home, losing that game, but then going on the road, having a great win against the same Atlanta Dream team, and then having to play this Liberty team that is still the best team in the WNBA, and then having to go out and play the Mystics, who are playing very well, who are also 2-2 and have gotten some really good performances from their big core, so and younger core. So they will play the Liberty in Washington on Wednesday. We will discuss that in our next episode, so stay tuned for that. That'll probably be out on Monday, as we'll give you some breathing time for these episodes, so you have time to listen to if you're listening to the Pacer side of it and also the Fever. But we'll have a lot to talk about on Monday. We'll be doing the Fever recap, their Fever preview for that Mystics team. Talk about who the Mystics are this season, what to expect from them, and how they are currently in the mix right there with the Fever at 2-2 and the WNBA standings. And speaking of those standings, let's go through them. Minnesota Lynx are 4-0. They have not lost a game. The New York Liberty 3-0 at the number 2 spot. The Phoenix Mercury are at 2-1 in that 3 spot. The Seattle Storm are back up there in the top of the league at the number 4 spot at 2-1. Golden State Valkyries picked up another win. They are now 2-1 as well. The Las Vegas Aces 2-1 in the 6th spot. The Washington Mystics at 2-2 in the 7th spot. Indiana Fever 2-2 in the 8th spot. The Atlanta Dream at 2-2 in the 9th spot. The Los Angeles Sparks are 1-3 in the 10th spot, and then you have the Chicago Sky, who are 0-2 in the 11th. Connecticut Sun in 12th at an 0-3 record, and the Dallas Wings at 0-4 in the 13th spot. I think you look at the Sky, Sun, and the Wings, and they're just in rebuild mode or trying to build a team. I don't think they're going to be very competitive throughout the WNBA season. So those 8 spots are I think there's 10 teams that could grab those 8 playoff spots, and Fever had a lot of work to do. They're in the 8th spot. they've had a real tough schedule. It gets a little bit lighter after they play the Mystics. So looking at the schedule ahead, and you're looking at what the Fever can do to advance themselves in the standings and hopefully start to look forward. I'm trying to pull up their schedule right now, but it's throwing me to some kind of weird website with shows me like a line schedule. I don't want that. I want to see who their next opponents are, because that'll be what I want to talk about next. Yeah. So again, like I said, Wednesday they will play the Washington Mystics in Washington at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on NBA TV. Then they will host the Connecticut Sun, who are Stephanie White's old team, and they will host them. Those Sun are 0-3, but that will be Friday, May 30th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Ion, which I believe you can watch on Amazon Prime and if you have YouTube TV. Then a Commissioner's Cup game Commissioner's Cup kickoff, where they will play the in-season tournament. Those games are going to count towards the record, but I think you play 5 Commissioner Cup games in that stretch in June. And if you have the best record in the Eastern Conference, you play the best record in the Western Conference in a Commissioner Cup final that will be, I think, in July, and does not count towards your regular season record. So the Fever are going to be looking forward to having a chance to win Commissioner's Cup, and they actually have a really good stretch of games to be able to do so, because they do play the Sky, the Mystics, and the Sun, who I think they should have a good shot against. Then they play that Atlanta Dream team again, but that'll be on the road. That'll be a tough game. And then they host the Liberty once again on June 14th in that Commissioner Cup stretch. But yeah, I mean, a really good schedule, I think, right away to get healthy and pick up some wins. This Mystics team, a pretty good team, pretty even with the Fever right now. The Fever have a good chance to maybe win some games here, because they go at the Mystics on the 28th. They host again that Sun team on the 30th. June 3rd, to kick off Commissioner Cup, they host the Mystics. That'll be Tuesday, June 3rd on NBA TV. Saturday, June 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern time on CBS, the Fever go to the Chicago Sky, who they handled very well in that opening game of the season. And then the next game I'll talk about, and then we'll kind of leave it off there, is the Atlanta Dream game that they play at Atlanta again on ESPN3 on June 10th. So I think a good schedule. I think you look at the next 5 games and you think, all right, we can probably win. Wait, was that 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Next 5 games, I think you could go 3-2 or 4-1. I think that's possible, and I think that'd be really good for the Fever. I think you want to go out of there at least with 3-2. But weirder things have happened. Pretty tough schedule once you get past that Chicago Sky game, because then you got to play the Dream, the Liberty. You have an easier game with the Connecticut Sun and Valkyries, or a team I think they can beat, but then you pick up the Aces and Storm. So a pretty tough schedule coming up for the Fever after these couple of games. So we'll see. A lot of things to talk about coming up. Hopefully that didn't confuse you too much. Confused me a little bit when I was talking about it. So sorry if I lost you on that one. But thank you for listening thus far. If you have, again, be looking out for that Game 5 preview. Fever will take on the Mystics in Washington on Wednesday. And we'll be previewing that, talking about who the Mystics have and who we can look forward to watching in that game, and what that game could mean for the Fever and how they should handle it. We'll give you a prediction and talk about some keys to the game and some improvements that need to be made after that Liberty loss. Heartbreaking one, tough one to lose. Again, thank you for listening. Some silver lining coming out of that, learning opportunities, growth. You can find us over on YouTube at the Pacers Fever Show. We are there doing the video portion of this podcast. If you want to watch video instead of audio, we are on YouTube. Again, at the Pacer Fever Show. Like, subscribe, comment. Helps people find us and builds that Fever community. Looking forward to interacting with more people as this Fever season gets underway and progresses, or it's gotten underway and progresses throughout the season. Looking forward to maybe collecting some silverware, some hardware in that Commissioner's Cup, because I think the Fever could really do that. That'd be fun. But you can also find us over in the audio version, anywhere you can find podcasts, but typically The one I post are Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's where a lot of people are finding us. But I know there are other people that listen to us on Podbean and other places too. So you can listen to us there. But that'll do it. Find us over on socials. Email us at the Pacers Fever Show at gmail.com if you have any questions. Or you can message us over on X. That's where I'm pretty active, the Pacer Fever Show. You can talk some Pacers or Fever with us over there. We will be posting throughout the regular season and the Pacers postseason. Again, Pacers are making their way through the Eastern Conference Finals, so we cover them as well. So if you're interested, you can find that on the same feeds. But yeah, thanks for following along. We can't wait to talk about that Fever and Washington game that's coming up on Wednesday midweek, and we will catch you next time. Thanks again.